In Chapter 4, we're going to take a look how we can further enhance a worksheet, and we'll begin by going through the objectives that are found on page 107. You'll notice in this chapter we're going to learn to change worksheet margins, both top, bottom, left, and right. We'll also learn to center a worksheet horizontally and vertically on the page. We'll learn to insert a page break in a worksheet. We'll learn to print grid lines and row and column headings within a worksheet. We'll set and clear a print area, insert headers and footers, customize print jobs, complete a spelling check on a worksheet, find and replace data and cell formatting in a worksheet, sort data in cells in ascending and descending order, and then finally filter a list using the auto filter. And the last two objectives there are looking at Excel from a slightly different perspective in that we're going to treat it as a database, and there are individuals who maybe don't have access on their computer or another form of database software, and so they do use Excel as a database. It has several features and can be used as a database, but you are limited in a variety of areas, and if you know how to use Access at all or any other database application, you know how limited it truly is. As you can see in the model answers on pages 108 and 109, there are only 3 projects in the chapter. However, there are several different formats that are going to be introduced just in project 1. So that'll take up the majority of the chapter, and then we'll have projects 2 and 3 applying some of the other latter features within the chapter. So we're going to start out in project 1. You'll notice in this particular project, and I'm on page 109, that we will continue to insert formulas in a worksheet. We'll change the margins, page orientation, and page size. We'll insert a page break. We'll print column headings on multiple pages. We'll scale data to print only on one page. We'll insert a background picture. We'll insert headers and footers, and then we'll finally identify a print area and custom print jobs. So we'll all do that in project 1. And as you can see there are 12 parts to the project. So we're going to start out formatting a document that I've already pulled up. It's called RP Budget, and I've saved it as they've requested at the bottom of page 110. And we're going to start out by inserting some formulas, which should be a review in the worksheet, but we're going to go to column N. And I don't know if you can see this, maybe I should review it real quickly. This is a budget showing the income, expenses, and then we'll calculate the total expenses and profit. And on the right here, we're going to be totaling the expenses for each of the months, get a total for the year for each one of the items, whether it be income or expenses. So starting in column N, in cell N5, we are going to use the sum function to total the numbers to the left. So again, from the Home tab in the Editing group, we're going to click on the Sum button. It should grab the appropriate cells, but I just want to make sure that it is picking up cells B5 through M5. I'm just going to press Enter, and then we're going to fill that down through row 10. Okay, and again, it's copying the formula relative to whatever row it's in. And then in row 11, we're going to have to insert formulas that will calculate the total monthly sales, the total income for each of the months. So again, I'm going to use the sum function. It's picking up on B5 through B10, which is what we want. I'm going to press Enter. And then we'll fill, using the fill handle, I let go of that too soon. We're going to fill the formula to the right through N11. So we've got a total for each one of the income items that are listed here, as well as for the total for the months. Okay, and then in cell N14, again, another sum function for all the expenses, and I'll autofill that down. We also want to total the expenses, so that's another sum function. I'm just going to double click on this, and that'll give me a total for the expenses for each of the months. And then the profit is essentially going to be total income minus your total expenses. So I'll start out with an equal sign, and then I'll click in B11, minus the total expenses. Press enter, and then we'll fill that across as well. After including or adding the formulas to these cells, you'll notice some of the formatting is a little bit off here. They want us in cells N5 through let's see here. Oh boy. N5 through N20, oops, N14, I'm so sorry. Actually just two places. We want the total row to have it, and then the total row, not the total row, total column, we want the first row of the income line and the first row of the expenses line. Both of those should have formats that are accounting number format with no decimals. So a couple ways we can do this. I'm going to go up to the ribbon and choose the accounting format here. I'm going to decrease the decimals again by going up to the number group and decrease decimals. And that'll make them consistent with the previous columns to the left. Next, we're going to change the margins, and we're going to do that through the Page Layout tab. So we'll go to the Page Layout tab, Page Setup Group. You'll see the Margins button. And there's some defaults here. They're the ones that may be widely used. Normal margins right now are 0.75 for both top and bottom, and then the left and right are 0.7. The header and footer area is 0.3. A wide margin has these settings, and a narrow margin has the following settings. None of those fall into the categories that we want to use, so we're going to go directly to Custom Margins, which will take you into the Page Setup dialog box. And in this, we're going to change the top and bottom margin. The top margin, we're going to change it to 3.5. I think I'll just type that in. And the bottom margin, they want that changed to 1.5. With this, also keep in mind, as you're changing these, you're seeing it changed in the preview, but you could go directly to the print preview. If you click on that, that'll take you to the backstage view, but it does put you in print preview, and you can kind of see the margins here. That's a 3.5 inch top margin, 1.5 inch bottom margin. And so we're going to do a couple of things in this print preview area as well. From this area, we can change the margins in the print preview area, or this backstage view. We're going to go back into the Page Setup dialog box, but if you'll look at the bottom vertical list of this, you should see a hyperlink that goes to Page Setup. Click on that, and that takes you into the Page Setup dialog box, and in there we can go to the Margins tab. This is right where we were previously. So we're going to change the top margin back to 1, or to 1. We didn't have it at 1 originally. And also the bottom margin is going to be set to 1. In addition, we also want to position the information so that it's centered both horizontally and vertically. So if you'll notice in the lower left hand corner, we're going to center that on the page both horizontally and vertically, and you can see that being changed in your print preview. And if you click OK out of this, it should kind of shift it in your preview area as well. A couple other ways to format your worksheet is by changing the page orientation and the page size. And there are times when these formats come into play when you're trying to fit your data on one page, or you're trying to specify a certain page setup, paper size, to make it fit appropriately for your audience. And so in this particular case, we are going to change the page orientation to landscape, and you can do that in this backstage view by going to the portrait orientation button. Click on that and switch it to landscape. And then also the letter button. This is the paper size, or the page size that we're using right now, set at letter 8.5 by 11. But we can change that to legal. So I'm going to click on the legal option, and that certainly fits all the text on one page. Now, obviously, there may be times when you're not going to have legal size paper that's going to work, but it's an option, and they just wanted to show you how to do that. So we're going to leave it like that for right now, and we're going to return back to the worksheet view. So I'm going to click back on the Home tab, and that'll get us back to where we were previously in the normal view. In the next area, we're going to learn how to insert and remove page breaks. And the software automatically puts in page breaks in your worksheet depending on where your margins are set. So some of those are just natural page breaks. Others you can put in manual page breaks and force where you want rows to appear. For example, if I wanted the expenses to appear on page 2, I could force a page break right here, and that would force it to page 2. Or in starting with July, if I wanted to force that to the second page, I could insert a hard page break as well. So we're going to experiment with that a little bit in Project 1C, and we're going to have to change some of the margins and the orientations back to what we had previously. Not necessarily orientation, but the letter size, the margins, and we'll take off the centering vertically and horizontally on the page. So we're going to kind of undo some things that we did previously. So the first thing that we're going to do is change the size back, and again, if you go back to the page layout tab, the size button is in the page setup group. I'm just going to click on the size button. We're going to take that back to letter, and if I go to print preview, you can see that it's changed it back to letter size rather than the legal size. So we're changing it back to letter. The margins, again, back to page layout. The margins we want to set back to, let's see, what did they ask here? Custom margins, custom settings. We'll choose this one. This is top and bottom of 1 inch and 0.7 for both the left and right. And then we also want to remove the check marks that we put in there for the horizontally and vertically centering. So on this one, let's go back into the page setup dialog box, and we're going to go to the margins tab and deselect the check boxes to remove the green check marks. And then we'll click OK out of that, and that'll get us back kind of where we were before. And then I want you to see, by doing that, by changing the margins, changing some of the letter sizes or the page sizes, you can see that a couple of things happened here. We've got a dotted line that separates column K and L. That's an indicator that there's going to be a page break there because of our margins that have been reset, and also our paper size. So if I look at print preview again, notice on the first page it goes up to looks like October, and if I go to page 2, then it picks up November, December in total. So alright, let's go back to the home tab in regular view, and we're going to insert a page break between columns I and J to kind of give it a little bit more even feel of having the same number of months on one page as it does on the next. So to insert that page break between columns I and J, we're going to select column J. And if you keep in mind, kind of like what we did when we inserted rows, whatever row you want to push down to the next line, you want to select that particular row. Same thing with September or the J column. If we want to push that to the next page or to the right, you want to select the column that you're wanting to push to the next area. So we've selected column J, and then to insert a page break, we're going to go to the page setup group in the page layout tab. There's a breaks button. I'll click on that, and then you'll notice the insert page break. And by doing that, that shifts the page break so that it appears between columns I and J. Now, we're in the normal view right now as you're previewing the worksheet, but there's also called a print or a page break preview that you may want to use to quickly make changes to where the page breaks are occurring. And we're gonna test that. If you notice on your status bar down at the bottom, we're going to click over to the page break preview, and it says you can adjust where the page breaks are by clicking and dragging them with your mouse. This is kind of a little tip. So I'm going to click on OK to that. And let's say that rather than having the page break between I and J, we want it to appear between G and H, okay, between June and July, which is the natural 6-month break. So to do that, you can switch these page breaks pretty quickly in this preview area. I'm laying my mouse on the blue vertical line. If I click and drag to the left, that repositions the page break between G and H rather than the I and J. It's a real quick way of being able to reposition your page breaks through this page break preview. Okay, and then you can go back to your normal view by going to the status bar and clicking on normal, And then you can see the dotted line in the normal view represents the page break. The next section that we're going to look at is how we can print column and row titles on multiple pages. Now, I want you to notice something before we do that. When we go into the print preview area, if you were to print this out, notice it's on two different pages here, and you can see zoom in here just a little bit. You can see that it's going through June. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see the totals here. That's not really helping much, is it? Sorry about that. But this is June. If I go to the next page, it's showing me the remaining 6 months, but I can't tell whether it's what income or what expense item these are referring to. So it'd be nice if we're going to the next page that we can keep, if we could keep the row headings on the left on the second page, and vice versa. If we had a page break between the income and the expenses, if we had a page break right here, we wouldn't be able to tell where the months are. So it'd be nice to be able to repeat those column headings on remaining pages. So we're going to do that. We're going to actually add rows to repeat on the left, as well as columns to repeat on the left for the second page, so that we can see where the income and the expenses are located. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the Home tab for just a minute so you can see back in the normal view. And then to print titles at the top of each page, I go back to the Page Layout tab, and if you want to go directly to Print Titles in the Page Setup group, you can click on that button. That'll again take you to the Page Setup dialog box directly to your Sheet tab, which is where you want to go. And if you'll notice, columns to repeat at left. So if you click in that area, go ahead and type in A1 through A21. That's all the headings there on the left, A1 through A21. Okay, and you could go ahead, if you want to print preview, you can see the income and expenses. If I go to page 2, income and expenses have been carried over to page 2 as well. So we can go ahead and save that since we've made that change. Next, we're going to take a look at how we can scale data. And a lot of times when you want to scale data, the purpose of that is to try to fit all your information on one page. And although this is one way to do it, there are a variety of ways that you can manipulate your worksheet, like changing margins, changing your font size, all kinds of things that you can do to try to get your data to fit to one page. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that when you fit it to one page, that does probably reduce the font size automatically. You don't want to make it so small that your user can't read it. So just be very aware of that. Be sensitive to making sure that it's visible for all readers. Okay, first thing that we are going to do, though, is take a look at the scaling option, and we're going to do that again from the Page Layout tab in the Scale to Fit group. And we're going to first of all look at the width box, and if you look in the width box, it's set to automatic, but if you click in your drop down arrow, you could have it set to one page. So if you click on that, notice it scaled it down to 69% of what it was originally. So let's take a look at what it's going to look like in our print preview. So I went to the File tab and went to Print, and that'll put us in Print Preview. Notice it's fitting it all to one page. Not too bad actually in size there. But notice how it's giving you quite a bit of right margin there. So we're going to manipulate the margins just a little bit, make some other changes as well. So we're going to change the margins, and again I'm going to go back to the Page Setup dialog box and click on the Margins tab, and we're going to change the margins. The top margin, we'll change that to 3.5, which we've seen that before. The left margin is going to be at 0.3, right margin is going to be at 0.3, and we'll leave the bottom margin as is. We also want to specify that the row titles print at the top for like the months and things like that. And so we want to get rid of the titles that are going to print at the left. So if you'll recall, we did that through the Sheet tab, and you know what? I can't do that in Print Preview. Well, okay. Let's go ahead and we'll come back to this in just a minute. I'll click OK. And that's shifting things around a little bit, obviously. We'll go back to the Home tab and need to go back into the Page Layout group in the Page Layout tab, Page Setup group, and then we'll launch the dialog box. Now in the Sheet tab, notice this is all available. Columns to repeat at the left, we'll delete that out. The rows, though, where the actual months are, we want those to repeat at the top in case it's carried out to, and we'll change this later, but in case it's carried out over multiple pages, we want the rows to repeat. So we're going to go ahead and type in A3 through N3, which represents these column headings, okay, the months. Go ahead and click OK out of that. And again, I'm going to show you the print preview. So now if it kicks over, which it will, to the next page, we still have the months showing there for the last few expenses at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to go back to the Home tab. We'll go ahead and save this one more time. The last little section of Project 1E has us returning everything back to kind of the defaults. So one thing is we're going to return the margins back to the default margins. So I'm going to go back to the Page Layout tab, Margins, and then we'll choose Normal. And then the titles, same thing. We're going to go back to the Page Setup dialog box. We'll remove the titles at that point. Click OK out of that. And then the scaling, they want that referred back to the automatic. And that the scaling should go back to 100%. So it's the width's automatic, the scaling is going to be at 100. Notice the page break came back into play. So you have a page break between June and July still. So they're going to leave that there.